There is a question. Every man eventually asks it. Not out loud necessarily, not always in words, but at some point, usually in the quieter stretches of midlife, it arrives. And when it does, it doesn't go away. It just waits, patient and persistent, until you're ready to take it seriously. I want to try to describe where this question comes from, because it doesn't arrive out of nowhere. It's built, assembled, slowly from years of experience, from the gap between the life you were building and the way that actually life felt from the inside, from the accomplishments that didn't produce what they promised, from the mornings where everything looked fine and something inside didn't quite agree, and from the moments scattered across the years when you were somewhere important, doing something that was supposed to matter. And underneath the doing and the mattering was a quiet, persistent thought. But is this what I actually want? This is the thought. Persistent. And the question doesn't arrive the same way for every man. For some, it comes through loss. Something ends. A job, a relationship, a version of the future, and in the aftermath, in the space where that thing used to be, a question appears. What was I actually working toward? For others, it comes through success. Everything works out. The goal is achieved. It is reached. And standing in the achieved version of the life, there is a silence where the satisfaction was supposed to be. And the question fills that silence. Was this what I meant to build? And for others still, maybe this is the most common version. It comes on an ordinary day. Nothing dramatic, nothing wrong. Just a Tuesday that looks like every other Tuesday. And a man sitting inside it who suddenly can't quite remember when he last felt genuinely himself. But there is the strange part. Most men, when this question arrives, try to answer it quickly. They generate answers, practical ones, structural answers. And they try to generate changes they could make, goals they could pursue, versions of the life that might fit better. And sometimes that's useful. But most men misunderstand what the question is actually asking. Because the question, the real one, underneath all its variations, isn't really about the life. It's about the man living it. It's asking, who are you? Who are you? Not the role, not the function, not the professional history, the actual person. Underneath all of that, the one with private values and genuine fears and things he cares about for reasons that have nothing to do with how they look or how they earn. And that question, who am I really? Who am I really when everything external is set aside? That question is one that most men have spent their entire adult lives too busy to answer. Most men build an identity. I'm talking about the first half of life. And that identity is almost entirely relational. It's relational to the work, relational to the role in the family, to what the culture rewards, and also to what the people around them expect. And that identity is real. It was built from real effort and real commitment. So it is real, but it's also contingent. It depends on the work continuing, on the role remaining stable, on the external structures holding their shape. And this is where things become interesting, because at some point in midlife, sometimes gradually, sometimes suddenly, those external structures, they shift. The career changes, or plateaus, or disappears. The children need something different. The roles that were so load-bearing begin to loosen. And the man who built his identity primarily on those structures find himself, let's say, in a strange position. Not collapsed, not destroyed, but exposed. You find yourself exposed. Suddenly, that man required to answer a question he's been able to defer for decades. Who am I when the structures aren't holding me up? Most men never notice this exposure coming. They feel it's groundlessness, drift. They feel it as the compass going quiet. When actually that's where their feeling is the first real invitation to build an identity that doesn't depend on the external scaffolding. And something changes after 40 and after 50 in a man's tolerance for the unanswered questions. When you're younger, uncertainty is mostly productive. The open questions are about the future, let's say. They are about the future. What you'll become, what you'll build, who you'll be when the life fills in. And that uncertainty has energy in it. The not yet resolved future, exactly because it's not yet resolved, is motivating. But after 40 and after 50, when the future is less open, when more of the life has already been decided, a different kind of question starts to surface. Not about the future, about the self. Do I actually know who I am? Not who I've been, not what I've done, who I am. And most men, when they turn that question honestly inward, find something they didn't expect. Not emptiness. I would say an unexplored territory. I would say a self that is more complex, more particular, more interesting than the functional version that's been running the show. A self that has preferences. Preferences no one ever asked about. Not only preferences, has values that were never given room to be expressed. A way of being in the world that got edited out early because it didn't match what the world seemed to need. And the question every man eventually asks is the doorway to that territory. Here is the truth. I keep arriving at, and I want to share it with you. The question isn't really, who am I? That's the surface version. The deeper version, the one that actually has the power to change things, is this. Am I living as myself? Am I living my life as myself? Not in some abstract philosophical sense. In the daily, concrete, practical sense. And the choices I'm making, are the choices I'm making actually a reflection of the person I am? Or are they a reflection of the person I learned to perform? Are the things that I am working toward actually what I want, or what I learned to want because the world around me valued them? Also about relationships. Are the relationships in my life actually nourishing the person I am or the person I present? These are not comfortable questions. They don't have immediate answers. And also, they don't resolve cleanly. But they are the most important questions a man can carry. Because a life built on honest answers to those questions feels different from the inside than a life built on inherited answers. It feels inhabited, like the man living it is actually present in it, not managing it from a slight remove, not performing it for an audience. Actually there, actually himself. So let me ask you directly. Have you asked yourself this question yet? Not the surface question, the real one. Am I living as myself? And I don't mean it as a judgment. I mean it as an honest inquiry. Because most men, when they sit with it honestly, not defensively, not with immediate justification, they find the answer is partly. Partly, yes. In some areas, some relationships, some corners of the life. And partly, no. There are places where the performance is still running, where the inherited answer is still standing in for the genuine one, where the man who exists underneath the role hasn't quite been given permission to show up. And identifying those places, naming them, even privately, even just to yourself, even just watching a video like this one, I believe is more valuable than most men realize. Because you can't move toward more alignment without first seeing where the alignment is. Maybe you already know exactly where that is for you. Maybe it's something you've been aware for years without doing much about it. And that's okay. That's okay. Seeing is the beginning. The question every man eventually asks himself, in whatever form it takes, and whenever it arrives, is ultimately the same question. Am I living the life that is mine? Not perfect, not easy, and not free from obligation, but genuinely mine, chosen, rather than just fallen into. Oriented toward what actually matters to you, rather than what was supposed to matter. And the answer to that question, the honest and defended answer, tells a man almost everything he needs to know about the second half of his life is for. And it tells him where more of himself is needed, where less performing will create more living, and where the distance between who he presents and who he actually is has cost him something. It doesn't have to cost him anymore. And that knowledge, that specific, personal, hard-won knowledge, it's not a burden. It's a direction. The one direction that, when followed honestly, tends to produce a life that feels like it was worth having. I've been walking with this question for a long time. Not always productively, and not always with the honesty it deserves. But I keep coming back to it. Because every time I ask it, really ask it, without flinching away from the uncomfortable parts, something in me gets a little more clear, a little more itself. And I've come to believe that the asking is the work, not the answering. The willingness to keep asking, to keep holding the question up against the life, and to keep refusing the comfortable version in favor of the honest one. That's it. That's all it is. And if you're carrying that question too, if it surfaces in the quiet moments and refuses to be permanently satisfied, good. Good. It means you're paying attention. It means the most important conversation a man can have, the one with himself, is still ongoing. Let me know if you liked this video by hitting the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to watch my next videos. And let me know in the comments what would you like me to talk about, and I'll see you in the next video. You will find it here. Let's meet there.